very cross, often with people just walking across the border. Donald Trump, is a businessman. A lot of these guys are entrepreneurs and run their own businesses, and they see some of themselves in him.
Now, President Biden and former President Donald Trump will face off in the first presidential debate of the 2024 general election on Thursday night in Atlanta. The candidates have spent the weekend sharpening their lines and are expected to address the state of the economy and immigration policy. Alistair Dawber is the Washington correspondent for The Times. He joins us now. Hello, Alistair.
Hi, Hugo.
Nice to speak to you again. How are the two candidates preparing? There are reports that Joe Biden has his personal attorney impersonating Trump. That sounds thrilling.
That's true. They're preparing in very different ways, actually. On the one hand, President Biden is in Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland. He's hunkered down with various people, really going through the paces, preparing, having people pretend to be Donald Trump ahead of the debate on Thursday. Donald Trump, by contrast, yes, he's doing lots of preparation, but on Saturday he held a big rally in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania being one of the big key swing states that could determine the outcome of the election, speaking to the people, speaking to his supporters, and really sort of trying to set up this idea of Biden perhaps not having the mental capacity to last the 90-minute debate.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I'm just completely captivated by this idea of Biden's lawyer pretending to be Trump. Have we ever heard his Trump impersonation? Is it any good? Should we get him on?
Perhaps we should. Perhaps you'd only might get him on after the debate. Yeah, I mean, I think both candidates will be now in session with their campaigns and with people who are pretending to be the other candidates as they try and find like tiny bits of edge. I mean, nobody really watching this debate on Thursday will be surprised by what they hear from Donald Trump or Joe Biden. So they'll just be trying to find whatever edge they can in the preparations before then.
What should we look out for? It's presumably likely to get intensely personal, and both the candidates are likely to speak of the other one's respective legal dramas and so on, right?
Exactly. I mean, we know where both candidates stand largely on policy, so I think it will end up being a bit of a scrap over personality. Joe Biden will press the idea that Donald Trump is now a convicted felon and that he can't be trusted by the American people. And on Saturday at the Trump rally in Philadelphia, we had a little bit of what Trump, I think, will attack, and that's Joe Biden's mental capacity to do the job for another 4 years, and the fear that many of Trump supporters have that Kamala Harris, the vice president, will step into the top job at some point in the next term.
And look, on the economy and immigration, which are the big deals there, I suppose, as well as here. Give me a rough outline of each. I mean, on the economy first, give me a rough outline of each candidate's position.
Well, Donald Trump will turn around and claim that the American economy was as strong as it's ever been when he was in office. He hands over the reins to Joe Biden, and inflation 2 years ago was spiking at sort of 9%. It's come down quite significantly since then. He's a businessman, and he knows how to get the American economy back on track. Joe Biden will say that Americans are doing rather well. Inflation has come down significantly. Unemployment is very, very low. And that a return of Donald Trump to the White House will mean tax cuts for the wealthy, but everyone else will be left to pick up the pieces and pay for those tax cuts. On the border, Donald Trump claims that the southern border is open and that 9 million or so migrants have crossed illegally into the US since Joe Biden came into office. Joe Biden will claim that Donald Trump is standing in the way of legislation that the White House has put before Congress to try and stem that flow of people. So those are the issues. I think American voters are pretty clear on where each of the candidates stand, and it might well end up as a bit of a scrap between the two over personality.
And look, the last debate they did against each other in 2020 was sort of seen as it was chaos. It was though there was sort of snapping and shouting and so on. How will this year differ? What tricks are they going to use in the structure of it to make it sort of be less mad, frankly?
Sure. I mean, both candidates have rejected the official bipartisan organisation that runs presidential debates and instead handed over to the TV networks. The rules are going to be very different. So microphones will be muted when each of the candidates isn't speaking. So there'll be less of an opportunity to talk over each other. There won't be an audience in the room. It'll be pretty sanitized, I think. So we won't get any reaction to what the candidates are saying other than from each other. So I think it will feel much more like a head-to-head, and perhaps a little less volatile. But with the two candidates and their history and their clear dislike for each other, I'm sure it'll become a bit nasty at times.
And look, you said Trump was speaking in Philadelphia. How did that go? What was he saying? What was his message, and how was he received?
Sure. Well, I mean, Philadelphia, one of the biggest city in Pennsylvania, which is in play, one of the key swing states. The Democrats really need to win Philadelphia if they're to hold on to the White House. And Donald Trump addressed local issues. He talked about crime. He talked about the availability of well-paying jobs for younger people, but also, try and practice some of his lines for the debate as well. Talked about Joe Biden's perhaps mental frailties and his capacity to do the job. So I think we can see some of the lines he used on Saturday afternoon being trailed again on Thursday.
And like he made repeated references to Crooked Joe. That's not that's not an attack that he's sort of wearied of now that he's kind of had his own court woes.
No, not at all. I mean, something you hear of all the time is, and this is a well-worn Trump phrase, that the Biden crime family. He accuses the Bidens of effectively using his position to grow rich on Joe Biden's presidential and political career. He talks to about Hunter Biden, the president's son, who was convicted a few weeks ago of illegally buying a gun. So yeah, it's lines. I mean, it also, I think he hopes, deflects a little bit from his own legal woes and tries to draw a line under that.
And look, finally, before I let you go, the Trump's campaign has made wooing Black and Hispanic voters a real priority this electoral cycle. Has that worked? Is that going to be a big difference?
Yeah, you look at some of, and especially Hispanic voters. It's the largest, it's the fastest growing, demographic in the US, and increasingly, Donald Trump is chipping away at that. I mean, you look at the border issue, where, as I said, about 9 million people have crossed the border. That's very, very unpopular with the Hispanic population, and many of those people have queued up for years, have filled in paperwork, hired lawyers at large cost in order to eventually get American citizenship, and they get very cross. Often with people just walking across the border. Donald Trump, is a businessman. A lot of these guys are entrepreneurs and run their own businesses, and they see some of themselves in him. So he is attracting certainly more of the Hispanic vote. The Black vote again is a constituency that both candidates do battle over, and Joe Biden does less well than some of his Democratic predecessors.
Sure. Thank you very much indeed, Alistair Dawber. That's Alistair there in Washington, the Washington correspondent for The Times. Thank you, Alistair.